All right, here we go. Ready to roll now. Well, we are on Thursday already this week. Can you believe it? It's Thursday. Now, remember what I've told you. Tomorrow, you have your government test, your social studies test. You're only your second one. And let's be honest, some of you didn't do so hot on the last one. So, what we're going to do right now is we're going to go over basically everything that's going to be on your test tomorrow. Then we'll have a short little reading lessons with some questions to review, okay? So let's take a look at a study guide I've created. So let's look at this together. And I'm going to tell you right now, everything I'm about to tell you is an answer for the test tomorrow in order. So you want to listen to this because here's the answers to your test questions. So are you ready? Let's talk about these. We've already learned all of these, but this is just review. After the Articles of Confederation, the U.S. government could declare war, but it could not create an army. So there's a distinction there. You need to know that. The government could declare war, but it didn't do much good to declare war if you don't have an army to fight the war, right? I think your question on the test says something like this: which one of these is not something the government couldn't do? So the answer is declare war, because the government could declare war. So read that question carefully, the very first question on your test tomorrow. The second, Shae's rebellion. Remember when those farmers who'd fought there in the Revolutionary War, when they had come back and they couldn't pay their debts, their land was being taken away, and so they rebelled and tried to get the guns from the arsenal. Well, when that happened, the government realized it was too weak, and so that led to the Constitutional Convention deciding that they needed to make a stronger government. Thirdly, the government went into debt because the Articles of Confederation did not allow the government to create taxes. So that word debt means you owe money to other people. So our government went into debt because we couldn't create taxes to get money to pay people back. That's how government gets money, through taxes. Fourthly, the Great Compromise was when Roger Sherman suggested that the legislative branch should have two parts: a House of Representatives and a Senate. So remember, you had the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan. The Virginia plan was more people in your state, the larger population, the more representation you got in Congress. The New Jersey plan said that's not fair. Everybody should have equal representation in Congress. And so they came up with this compromise, Roger Sherman's Great Compromise. We'll do both. We'll have the legislative branch, we'll have a Senate where every state gets equal representation, and it will have a House of Representatives where it's based on population. All right, next, the 3/5 Compromise said that a state could count 3 out of 5 of its slaves in its population. So remember, there was an argument. The southern states, who had hundreds of thousands of slaves, wanted to count those slaves in their population. The northern states said that's not fair. So the compromise there was they could count 3 out of 5. That's the 3/5 Compromise. Next, ratification. Remember when the Constitution was written, all the states had to ratify it. That means they had to sign it or approve it, agree that it was going to be a new law for our country. So ratification means to sign or approve. Delegates at the Constitutional Convention decided how to divide the power between state and central government. So the state government under the Articles of Confederation, remember we read that each state was almost like its own country. They had their own rules, their own laws, their own money, which didn't work really well. So they had to rewrite or redo the government and make the Constitution. They gave more power to the central or federal government. So they decided how that power was going to be divided. Anti-Federalists, they're the ones who didn't want a strong government, very much against the Constitution at first. They said, we're not going to sign it unless you add a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. That's those first 10 amendments that guarantee certain rights of citizens of our country. Anti-Federalists wanted a Bill of Rights added to the Constitution. The system of checks and balances keeps one branch of government from becoming more powerful than the other. So the president isn't like a king. He has to get the approval of the legislative branch before he can do things like nominating a Supreme Court justice, like we've seen in the news lately. The legislative branch can make a law, but the president can veto it if he doesn't agree. And then the judicial branch, they can look at a law that's been made they can say it's unconstitutional. So there's a check and balance system that keeps one branch of government from becoming more powerful than the other. Next, you need to know what the three branches do. The legislative branch creates laws. Laws are created in the legislative branch. The executive branch enforces the laws. Laws are then interpreted by members of the judicial branch. And the legislative branch is Congress. That's the House of Representatives and the Senate. The executive branch is the president, the vice president, and his cabinet members. And the judicial branch, that's the Supreme Court. An amendment is a change to the Constitution. Remember, the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments, first 10 changes to the Constitution. It's because they added them after it was signed. There's 27 amendments today. The Constitution is the highest law in the land. We look to the Constitution for the basis of all other laws. And you can't make a law in our country if it doesn't agree with the Constitution. It's the highest law in the land. There's just a question on your test that says, which one of these four guys was not a leader there in the Constitutional Convention? The answer is Davy Crockett. He comes along a little later in history. He's from Tennessee. We'll learn about him, but not yet. And then finally, the First Amendment, freedom of speech. You can say what you want to say as long as it doesn't hurt somebody. Religion, you can go to church wherever you want to go to church or not go. Freedom of the press, newspapers, news shows on TV. They have the right to report the way they want to report, and the right to assemble. That means you can gather together, you can protest, things like that. You have those rights guaranteed by the First Amendment. So all of these are going to be on your test tomorrow. All right, go back over this slide. Make sure you know these things. You have a slide with just this on it, so you can look at it, study it, let your parents ask you questions about it. Every one of those are going to be on your test tomorrow, okay? All right, we're going to read two quick texts today, and then you'll have some questions to answer about them. And the first one here is called We the People. So let's read this. Much is said in the preamble, which is a long sentence that starts the Constitution. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. In the last 231 years, there's been a lot of debate about exactly what those words mean. Here are some ideas. Under the Articles of Confederation, the 13 states had not been unified. Right off the bat, the authors of the new Constitution said its purpose was to form a more perfect union. Union is people united. When we did our little dance last week, United States of America. We're together. We're one. We need to stick together. A more perfect union. One of the reasons for the American Revolutionary War is that, I've covered it up here, is that American, I'm going to wait till my screen comes, I've covered it up. Americans believed that the British system of justice wasn't fair. That may be why the phrase established justice was included. So they wanted a fair system of justice, the courts, and the way things worked in our laws in our country. Make sure it's fair for everybody. Ensure domestic tranquility, a fancy way of saying make sure we have ways of dealing with internal arguments. Under the Articles of Confederation, states argued with each other about things such as where the borders between them existed. Perhaps the phrase ensure domestic tranquility referred to problems such as border agreements. Under the Articles of Confederation, there had been no real way for the country to raise taxes and pay for a combined army. The Constitution took care of that, which is where the phrase provide for the common defense. We want our country to defend us from attacks, which is where that came from. Then the word posterity refers to a person's descendants, like children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc. By using that word, the author was saying that he hoped the Constitution happened a long time. So this is We the People. You know all about these phrases. We've sung it a bunch. Did you know there's a lot of math in the Constitution? This really short little article is called Constitutional Fractions. We interrupt this social studies booklet for a math lesson. Not really. 4 important fractions come up in the Constitution: 1/2, 2/3, 3/5, and 3/4. If those fractions mean nothing to you, then you can't understand how the Constitution works. For instance, for a bill to be approved by the House, more than half of the senators have to vote for it. More than half. For a bill to pass in the House of Representatives, more than half of its members have to vote for it. Since the size of both the House and the Senate have grown over the years, the numbers needed to pass votes has gone up. So one half of the House, more than one half of the House, and more than one half of the Senate have to approve a law or for it to become a law, be voted for. Second fraction, if the president vetoes a bill, more than 2/3 of the members of the Senate and the House must vote to override that veto for that bill to become a law. Since the size of each chamber has risen, the number needed to override has also gone up. So let's say that the legislative branch makes a law that says it's illegal to, let's use more relevant one, that everybody in the country has to wear a mask all the time. And the president says, I don't agree, and he vetoes that, which means he says it's not going to become a law. Well, if 2/3 of the legislative branch, more than 2/3, say, no, we're going to make it a law, then they can override his veto. That's another part of the checks and balances. It's 2/3 fraction. What about 3/5? We know about the 3/5 fraction. Under the original Constitution, only 3/5 of the slaves living in a state counted toward the state's population. This total population, in turn, was used to determine how many members of each state had in the House of Representatives. So 3/5 compromise. And the last fraction, 3/4. At least 3/4 of the states must approve an amendment for it to be added to the Constitution. Since the number of states has risen from 13 in 1789 to 50 today, the number of states needed to approve changes to the Constitution has also gone up. So who knew? Lots of math in the Constitution. We will be learning about fractions later on in math this year. Okay? All right. Important stuff today. Make sure you look at that study guide. Study, guys. Study. If you don't study, you're not going to do well on the test tomorrow. 4th grade social studies, you have to learn to study. Make yourself some note cards, whatever you need to do. Study for the test tomorrow. You'll have very few questions about these two little texts that I just read to you, We the People and Constitutional Fractions. Get that done and study. I want you to do good on this social studies test tomorrow. See you later.